You have resolutions. I know you do. Even if you don't write them down, you got them. Are they adventure related, health related, personal success? What are they? We are going to dive into the dynamic of New Year's resolutions. I'm Stephen Casimiro. I am your co-host for the Adventure Journal podcast, live from Budokan today. With me is Justin Hausman, our senior editor and co-host. What is up, Mr. Hausman?
I'm just jotting down personal success as a good New Year's resolution because that's not something I've ever once thought about, which seems super
clearly.
important. Yeah, right, yeah. That's been the problem this whole time. Okay, personal success. Okay, that's number one now. That's bumped off what was previously number one. So
my number one resolution, this is more of a life rule than a resolution, and I think that this should apply to everybody, is just never wear socks. Funnier than you are. This has a recipe for a lack of personal success, I think.
I thought you were just going to say never wear socks, which, I mean, that'd be a cool one. I like that for a resolution. Just something completely wacky and random it's not really going to improve anything. Just something I'm going to try to do for a full year. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think resolutions, that's a great point, actually. I think that one of the things that we stopped doing, and we were trying to do it around the house, is just mix things up. Like we sit in the same seat every night at dinner, you know, and just move around the table, just to change, because we get in these routines. And so, yeah, that would be a potentially smelly, bacteria-laden, interesting one to do. So funny thing is, you probably don't believe me, I never wear socks in my bike shoes.
Oh, interesting.
And they don't smell. I swear to God, they do not smell. I let them air out. I take them off and put them out in the sun.
It's because you only ride around the block and then you take them off.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, you don't sweat in them.
There's that. So I did go for a nice ride this last weekend. On my gravel bike. So, I made some resolutions, I think, actually around bikes. Talking about mixing things up, I actually, under the influence of my influencer son, I ended up getting a gravel bike again. I bought the Canyon Grizzle, was on sale. It was an amazing price. I had gotten bored with
like grizzled. What is it?
Yeah, like GRIZZL or GRIZL, something like that. I don't have a full suspension mountain bike anymore, and I don't have a geared mountain bike anymore. I got a steel single speed from Kona. So I just in trying to mix it up. I mean, it's like whether you're working out or anything, I think it's important to push yourself to new things. So let's talk about resolutions. You got some.
I do. And it's funny that you mentioned the mixing up thing, because my number one, okay, well, first of all, I'm actually mixing it up by even having any New Year's resolutions. I'm kind of a curmudgeon by nature. And so the idea of like an arbitrary, okay, it's a new year, I can do all these things I couldn't do before or wanted to do but didn't. I mean, it's like, no, like I guess I'm sure there's people out there that actually make resolutions and stick to them and look back at the year and be like, wow, I did it, but like, I don't know anybody who does that. So the idea of it always seems sort of silly to me. But this year, and I think it's partially just because, having two young kids, like each day blurs into the next so fast that, I mean, it could be the smallest thing, like I'm going to pick up the socks in the house or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's been 6 months and you haven't done it. I mean, it just, life is really fast with two little kids. So I think this year I'm finally like, okay, these things I always talk about, I'm really going to do it, at least the easy ones, and I'm going to write them down, and I'm going to look at this every day, and at least I will have thought about it on a daily basis. So I'm sort of changing it up that way. But
so that's your resolution, to think about your resolutions every day, even if you don't act on them.
What do you think? It's pretty meta. That's a very meta.
I think that's a pretty high bar, honestly.
So, but the changing things up thing is interesting. So my aunt for Christmas got me a book called The Tao of Bill Murray. I'm a big Bill Murray fan. I mean, who's not, or maybe, at least you appreciate the guy. I didn't really know what to think of it. I mean, I'm not like a Bill Murray head. Like, I don't know why, she obviously thought it would appeal to me. So she bought it, and I started reading it, and I'm fascinated by it. And, it kind of makes sense when you think of Bill Murray, like as being kind of a wacky sort of comedian, and I don't use wacky like without thinking about it. I mean, the guy he'll wear a funny hat, do kind of that silly kind of old school comedy a lot of the times. But I didn't know this about him, but apparently after he made Ghostbusters, I think it was after Ghostbusters, he was worried that he was going to be too famous, and it would go to his head. So he moved to Paris for like 6 months, and he studied at the Sorbonne, which is like Paris's huge, important university. And he studied under a professor, like a philosophy professor, who was kind of a surrealist. And the professor's whole thing was just jolting people out of their malaise, that like everybody's sleepwalking through life, and that there are ways that you can break people out just to wake them up. And that's kind of been Bill Murray's whole thing ever since. And he's sort of famous for, if you have the internet, you probably know this. I mean, he's famous for showing up at like singing karaoke at people's weddings just randomly. One year during the Surfer Poll, I think it was the first year I ever went to Hawaii for the Surfer Magazine Poll Awards, this huge award show that they used to do at the Turtle Bay Resort. Bill Murray tried to get in. He was apparently staying there and tried to get into the award show, and like the bouncers didn't know who he was and didn't let him in.
That's seriously messed up.
Isn't that insane? Like Brendan Thomas, who's now the publisher of Surfer's Journal, was my boss at the time, and he found out later, like halfway through the show, that Bill Murray had been trying to get in, and the Hawaiian security guards didn't know who he was. And like, no, man, you can't come in, and we were all just crushed. But he's famous for just showing up and just being weird, and like his whole thing is like, I just want to wake people up. But he also says it's partially for him, like he wants to wake himself up. Even though he doesn't really have to do anything he doesn't want to do on a daily basis, he still gets into the same routines. And so for him, if it's like walking up to somebody on the street he doesn't know and like covering their eyes and saying, "Guess who?" and they turn around and it's Bill Murray, like that wakes you up. You have a special moment, but so does he. And so that's actually kind of my main resolution this year is to just anytime I'm aware that I'm sort of sleepwalking through the day or I'm just going through the motions, wake myself up. And I don't even know what that means. I mean, maybe it's just like sprinting down the street. Maybe it's jumping in the creek down the street from my house, something I would never normally do, just to kind of wake myself up to change things up a little bit. I mean, actually, it could be something as simple as like sitting in a different place when you eat dinner. I mean, all those little things, like I think that they're important.
Well, I would like to interject here and say that most days when Justin and I talk, at least when we talk in the morning, he is usually sleepwalking because he's been up since 4 or he's gotten 3 hours sleep, and this is the nature of having two wee Groms running around the house.
It's weird that you would think like chaos just becomes the norm. You know, I mean, if you're a parent, you know how that is. So it seems odd that would be the case, but it is the case that your day is just filled with chaos all the time, which it makes it really hard to stick to a resolution.
So here's my complaint with resolutions. And earlier this week in the AJ newsletter I wrote, I sent it out under the subject line resolutions, smesolutions, and talking about kind of how I don't, it's not I don't believe in them, but I think that too often you set yourself up for failure. And by having this massive list of things that are ultimately, unattainable over time. And I kind of believe more in that whatever you resolve, you kind of do it on a daily basis, not really around, some kind of externalized goal, but it's sort of like you every minute, every hour, you're trying to make change, basically, right? Because that's what resolutions are. They're about personal change. So I love your idea, but how do you put that into practice? Like, how do you, like, we going to see you wearing a bozo nose, or, are you going to do more karaoke?
Maybe. I mean, honestly, probably. Maybe there's a karaoke bar down the street, for example. I've never done karaoke in my life. It doesn't seem like something I would be good at. I mean, I like singing at home, but I can't even imagine doing that. There's like an open mic comedy night every like Tuesday at this same place. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I mean, there's a really good chance that we have this conversation in 2025 and I haven't done anything about it. But there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to do it. I mean, maybe it is just kind of copying what Bill Murray does. I don't know. Maybe one thing differently every day. I think we need to revisit this a year from now. And Joni was just telling me about some NPR podcast thing, and they went back and looked at all their stuff in 2023. I think that's a pretty a good thing to do. And I also want to say, too,
that we are going to be recording next, I believe, our listener watcher feedback episode. And we've gotten some great responses from people. You can send us an email, mail@adventure-journal.com. We would love to get voice memos from you so we can share your voices on this, because so far we've had all 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 1 4-star review, and we just got our first 2-star review, which says that it's just Justin and me talking, and we're boring. So,
well, it's that is a podcast. That is
well,
what a podcast
no,
is.
it's a good code. We do have more guests lined up, and actually next week we're also recording a podcast with Eric Blem about his new book on Craig Kelly, snowboarder Craig Kelly. But we want to hear from you, and I want to know what your resolutions are, whether you believe in resolutions. And if you have resolutions, let's all hold each other accountable on those things, because I think that's one of the things that enables resolutions to come through, is that we share them with other people and we check in on them. So let's leave a DM us on Instagram, leave a comment on YouTube, or drop us a mail. So I had somewhere that I was going to go before I started on. Oh, yeah. So what's your number 2?
So you and I have talked about this a ton, but one of the things that I moved to Marin County, I guess it's 4 years ago now, but I'd already kind of played up here a ton, and I lived in San Francisco. And one of the cool things about it is it's mostly open space, and with a really intricate and awesome trail system. But it's not so big. Like, you couldn't do this I guess you could do this in the Sierra, but it's still relatively self-contained. Like, I wish off the top of my head knew the square mileage. I don't. But I'm never planning on leaving. So, I've talked to you a bunch about how one of the things I'd love to do is be able to hike like every trail. And I've done a pretty good job in the time that I've been here. But one of the things I don't do is I don't route it. I don't like journal about it. I don't plug it into any kind of like GPS thing. So I'm kind of just relying on memory at this point. And so that's like honestly kind of my main one this year, is to actually get, like, I don't think I want to do it on Gaia either, because I just don't, or any kind of digital thing. It's just not the way I think about my outdoor experience. I still have a really hard time, and we probably talked about this with the Apple Watch episode, but I still have a really hard time like imposing a digital framework over my outdoor experience.
Yeah, let me interrupt you here.
Yes.
I think the most powerful way you can do it is just by memory. Absolutely. I have a friend who is a guide who never takes a map. He just doesn't believe in it. So there's a really good argument to be made for that. On the other hand, when I've done these kind of quests, I've been religious about tracking them with GPS. I think it has power in 2 ways. And I'm not suggesting that you change. I'm just sharing my experience. One is that there is kind of a satisfaction of going and seeing what you've done, even though it's embedded in your body. Actually seeing it on a screen, or a printout, or even I keep gazetteers, and in the places I've been, I highlight them. Yeah, and but also, and this is where I think it's even more powerful, is it shows you the blank spots. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I do when I set goals, adventure goals and exploration goals, is I try to look at the biggest blank spots still left on my map. And I'm like, okay, that's where I'm going to go this year. And I'm going to shrink the size of those huge empty areas I'm going to drive through it, or I'm going to hike through it, or I'm going to ride through it. And this time next year, there will be a line across there, and I will know more about what that is. So that's the only thing I would suggest, is that I love that. But, there's also, there is an argument to be made for recording it.
Well, so my plan is to just take my big Marin. Like, actually, I have I should probably do it with quadrangles, but I have right now just the pretty classic like Marin hiking map, and my plan is just draw on it, color coded. This one I liked, this one I didn't, this one had water, this one didn't, that sort of thing. But the memory, that's how I operate now, is with memory, But like, for example, yesterday my family and I went on a New Year's Day sort of picnic hike up on this ridge where you can see the ocean. And we don't go up there nearly enough. And as I'm sitting there, I see this guy on a mountain bike ride up, and kind of like 100, 200 yards away, and kind of climbed this little hill on this little trail, and then just disappeared. And I thought, where's this guy going? There's no legal trails up here at all. And so I walked down and saw this little trail. And I did drop a pin on that because I want to find that trail. I want to ride it. But that's a great example. Like as I'm walking on this trail with the family, I'm hearing like water I didn't know was there before. And like I haven't spent really much time up there at all. And I realized there's a whole network of systems down in here as well. And I don't even know how much those are going to be on a map anyway. Probably a lot of them aren't. There's probably a lot of unsanctioned, even hiker trails that are unsanctioned. So, being able to, I guess I like the visual aspect too of a map with like different colors on it. Like, okay, this one had water, that's a great one. So, we'll see. But
I like the idea of having a map on the wall. You know, you're a little space constrained. I suppose you could put one up out in your platform tent.
Totally. That's kind of the idea. Yeah. I love the idea of doing like quadrangles now that I'm thinking about it, because those are
right.
I'm going to see even more. But I think, and that's the thing with like adventure resolutions, I do feel like, or maybe at least like this is a bit more attainable than like, I'm not going to drink, or I'm going to be nicer, or whatever, like a lot of other resolutions might be. I do feel like these are things I can climb this, I can hike this, I can ride this. Like these are things you can actually tackle. And for me, this speaks to the, all of a sudden it's been a year and I haven't done this. All of a sudden it's been 3 years and I haven't really done this. So this is something that I can actually make a movement toward attaining. And the other one is this right here. I just got this mushroom guide.
He's showing a picture on YouTube. If you're not
on YouTube, just got this mushroom guide to all of like Western North America. But right now it's been raining all the time. There's mushrooms everywhere. So that's like phase 2. Is that, we talked about how much we love the Seek app, but I want to know I want to be a grizzled gray-haired dude with insane calves and like who hikes all these trails every day. And when you see him, you can ask him whatever, what is that tree? What is that root? What is that? There's even, I saw when I bought this book, they have an animal scat one.
I just bought an animal scat book.
Is it the California Natural History Guides? Is it that publisher?
I don't think so.
Yeah, this same publisher makes an animal scat one, and like I'm gonna probably go pick that up today from this new bookstore that just opened down the street, which is great. But like that kind of thing, we encountered a bunch of scat yesterday. It's like, gosh, I think that's coyote, but I don't know. I want to know. I want to be that person for this area. You can. It's attainable. It's not like some giant. It's not like I'm in Alaska. So that's phase 2.
Okay, so why do you want to do that? What is your underlying motivation for wanting to do all this?
I guess to me, it's a deeper level of immersion in where I am. I do not take this place for granted. I mean, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Every day we talk about how fortunate we are to be able to get a foothold here. I can't imagine living anywhere else. But there's nothing wrong with just riding bikes and going on hikes and sitting out and just observing the nature and loving it. And that's fine. But I want to be deeper into it. I mean, I want to understand more about why the rivers are where they are, why the streams are where they are, why the salmon come now and not other times. Are there more? Are there less? What do these birds mean? I want to know all that. I mean, I want to live and breathe this place. And it means a lot to me, I guess, to know the most that I can about it. It almost seems like you're sleepwalking through it in a certain extent. If you I just see green trees, I just see pine trees. Like we found a little forest yesterday of perfect Christmas trees. And I'm like, oh, these are Douglas firs. I know these grow around here. These are perfect Christmas trees growing. I'm sure these are Douglas firs, but I don't know, And so, but I'd like to. It just seems silly not to.
I mean, everybody chooses their path, right? So I don't think you can fix an arbitrary rule on people. But as you're talking, I wonder how differently the world would be if we took it as a responsibility,
right,
to know the natural world where we live. And we're really good at knowing the human-built world. We're good at sussing out societal trends and music and the movies that we need to see and all of that sort of stuff. And that's completely valid because we're humans. But I wonder, because I've been on that same path as you have, as you know, of trying to understand more about the places that I live and the places that I love, and in the plants and the flora and the fauna. And
well, it feels like there's a responsibility there, right? Like I feel like in some ways when I don't know, which is most of the time. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means on the flora and fauna around here, but it feels. I don't mean this in a judging way if you're not like this, but it feels a bit like a failure that I don't. It's something I need to rectify. I need to know these things. Like it's important that I do for some reason. I don't know. Part of it is probably wanting to teach my daughters. Yesterday, my 4-year-old was super interested in these little mushrooms that we found, which turns out they're called bleeding head fairy caps.
Oh, what a great name.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. And they were amazing. They were growing out of the moss of these a pine tree. I'm not sure what it was, but they were growing out of the moss on the bark. And some of them were so small you could barely see them. Other ones were about like 2 or 3 inches. They're beautiful little mushrooms. And she was fascinated. And that, I don't know. I guess it seems weird that I want to learn it just to teach it to her, but she could learn it herself. But there's something about that where I'd like that experience.
I don't think that's weird at all. In fact, the only time that I ever feel envy on social media is when people, I can think of 2 friends in particular who are sharing the names of, whether it's the scat or the name of the specific species of a plant. It's that they have more knowledge or appear to have more knowledge of the natural world than I do. And it spurs me to, want to learn more. And I think that, part of it is wanting to just feel more at home in the world. As we're talking, I was thinking about purpose. And I'm thinking about why we're here, what we want, because resolutions always come back to this idea of change and this idea of growth, this impetus to become somebody that we aren't currently. And at the core of that is a kind of dissatisfaction. And that is the nature of humans is to be perpetually dissatisfied. But I wonder how much of this is connected to purpose. And we do feel this hunger for purpose, right? Like to get ourselves to another place. I think feeling more connected to the world around us, I think that we all crave that intuitively because we know that we've gotten away from that. So is there anything else on your list?
Well, yeah, and they're all kind of related. The other one is, and I suppose this is sort of a touchy subject, but here it is. Like this is the year I'm finally going to start guerrilla camping around here. I've decided. I've been talking with a bunch of friends about it. That's not touchy. Well, I don't know. People, I mean, you're a Marin.
People get upset if you breathe.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, it really is like living in a snow globe or something, or like a museum of how it was, and you're not allowed to touch it or use it. But part of it's a reaction against that, and like, there's no real way to make it. I just feel like I'm not gonna, I practice leave no trace. Like I'm not gonna start a fire. I'm not gonna do, I'm just gonna sleep. Like what's the difference? I'm up here anyway. Like I'm just gonna sleep. And part of it's like, I loved our conversation with Al Humphreys, and that's part of his thing was like if there's a hill over there and you just go sleep on it. And I'm going to do it this year. Me and a couple of my friends that talk about this all the time we all kind of picked our spots. So I think this year that's a big one for me. It'd be a little, it's like thrilling. I mean, it makes just kind of the mundane like hikes, even though it's a beautiful place, like it can get mundane even if you are learning the plants and animals, but it adds a little thrill. It's the same reason I kind of enjoy, riding on illegal trails. They might not be super fun a lot of the times, but there's that sort of cat and mouse thing. Like, am I going to get busted? And there's a little thrill, a little element that I like there. So I think it'd be fun. I think it'll be neat to just kind of see my area from a slightly different perspective. Plus, I just wish there were more campgrounds. It's not my fault there's only one campground. And I've camped at like half the sites there now. So I need something else. We don't have a ton
there's
of
a resolution for you.
But yeah.
Camp at the other half.
Right. Well, that's honestly part of it. It's like, I have all this bike packing stuff, and we've talked about how we don't really like embrace bike packing enough. And there's a bike packer campsite. I think it's got to be 8 miles from here, and it's like how I could do that 3 times a week, just to try out new stuff or what have you, just to make things a little bit different. I mean, that's also part of the breaking out of the sleepwalking thing. I mean, it's so easy to just, pick up the girls from school and we have dinner and we read a book, maybe we watch a movie together, whatever, and then it's bedtime and then it's the next day, and it's like, well, what if me and Olivia, the 4-year-old, hopped on my bike and we camped down the street? I have her back for school the next day. I mean, simple things like that.
There was a story that was bouncing around a few months ago, the mainstream media. I don't know if this guy, I forget where this professor was, Stanford, maybe, UCLA, I'm not sure, who basically was arguing that we have no free will, that we are essentially bundles of cells responding to stimulus in a very predictable way. So on the one hand, you could say, well, yeah, turning over a calendar a year to a new year gives us the opportunity to rethink. do we challenge ourselves to make change? And sometimes we do. This guy would argue, it's futile. You are who you are. And, so I kind of wonder about that stuff. Like, and this is not critical. This is not a criticism of you. I'm just speculating here. Like you talk about like sleepwalking, but as somebody whose kids are grown, like when you're in it with little kids, it feels often like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that is a sweet spot in life.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, I know. So I guess maybe I can address sort of my take on
Yes.
Resolutions.
Yeah, you have the floor.
And why I don't really have any. So first, I feel like I think a lot about things where I'm setting myself up for failure. I heard a phrase last year in 2023 called nuts, nagging unfinished tasks.
Okay.
And I think a lot about the cognitive load of negativity.
Yeah.
And things that you carry around that sort of breed a level of dissatisfaction. And one of the paths that I've been on for, well, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, whenever Marie Kondo kind of like broke through.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
that was big.
Yeah, well, I had been. This sounds silly, and this is definitely it's a Western consumer's problem. But I would go to Packford to go on a camping trip or some sort of explorative adventure, and I would spend the longest time trying to figure out like what sleeping bag to take, like what kit to take. And I'm like, this is ridiculous that I have so much stuff that I can't like have one and just use that one. That's how most people do it, and most people probably don't have sleeping bags. And so I've been on this path of kind of trying to get rid of the things to clear out the detritus, the weeds in my life that stand between me and doing the things that really matter to me. And, I've written in AJ, one of my intros about, my embrace of minimalism and in really minimalist with stuff. I mean, stuff is a part of the adventure experience. We do gear reviews and things like that. And, personally, I try to have as little stuff as I possibly can and keep my focus on the actual activities that I want to do. So my approach has been to sort of look at life and look at my life somewhat objectively and scientifically, and think about to bring the things that are important into high relief and to get rid of the things that are not important. And so I have from a health standpoint, I've been focusing a lot the last couple of years on longevity and looking at a science-based take on longevity. I mean, so I do have resolutions, but they're not so much written down as I'm trying to embody them so that I carry them with me every day. One of them is to stop eating processed or to eat minimally processed food, to eat as much whole food as I can. Another is to move as much as I possibly can throughout the day. And, some of those things will fall into place for me. Like, well, okay, I want more zone 2 riding.
Yeah.
And I want more zone 2 trail running. And I want more VO2 max oriented, interval stuff, which is hence the single speed. Like I've never been as fit in my life as I was when I was alternating days. I would ride my single speed and I would trail run. And the single speed has, you're never in the right gear. So you're always like spinning really, really fast, high intensity, and maybe your heart rate isn't getting up. You're kind of spinning along and you're getting like a zone 2, but then you got to climb a hill and like you're just absolutely maxing until you have to walk. So there's like this built-in kind of perfection in terms of training. It's also really fun. And so it's not that I don't want to do things, it's that I want to be more, I feel like for me, it's more important to have broader goals than an actual resolution. And I want to share some of the things that have been influential for me in driving that forward. And first off, this is not to say I've not had adventure goals. I've had. And I had a year where I was going to ride 1 million vertical feet on my bike. Or sorry, not 1 million, 500,000. Like 1 million I knew. I have a friend who year in and year out, always rides a million, but he does nothing but ride basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I have another friend, Kevin, who used to work with AJ, he worked with Specialized, and in his 50th year, I think that his goal was to ride 500,000 vertical feet. I think it was. I know he pulled it off. It took like completely kind of changing the nature of his life.
Of course.
And the year that I did it, in the year that my son was in college and my daughter was in high school, and I determined that I was going to ride every major street and trail in South Orange County.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a silly, in some ways, it was a silly resolution. It took me a few years, but it wasn't just about the number. It was about wanting to ride a lot while my daughter was still at home, to be around, and to be able to ride things from the house, and also to have a better understanding of the topography where I live.
Yep.
I have such a good sense of what hills or what the water courses are and the watersheds here from that year. It was a really powerful year for me. But the things that have been really influential for me, first is Yes Man, the movie with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
You've
been talking about that a lot lately.
Yeah.
Watch it.
You need to watch it. And so
say yes to Yes Man.
Yes, you need to. Yes. And I tend to be like you. I don't think of myself as a loner, but when it comes right down to it, like,
I absolutely embrace being a loner.
I often say no. No, I don't want to go do that. No, I don't. And so the Yes Man is about this guy who is very much a no guy, and he ends up going to this kind of personal growth empowerment seminar. The guy is trying to get people to say yes to everything. And so Jim Carrey, in the way that only Jim Carrey can, says yes to everything. He learns Korean, he learns guitar. Yeah, he does all these things. It's just such a wonderful movie. It has so many lessons to it. And so my wife and I think about it all the time. And I try to say, I've gotten a lot better at saying yes to things. And the other thing and this comes more from my wife, it also comes from, having lost my dad, and going through his health issues, watching my mother-in-law have cancer and die from it is just, not having regrets. Like, the pick up the phone and call your mom kind of thing. Like, are you going to regret this? So those two things have been, those have been real drivers for me. And they're really simple. There's something that you can carry around with you all the time. And,
that's something that I don't think about enough, but that's probably more powerful than any other possible resolution you could make. I mean, if there's something that that's eating away at you, just take care of that. And like to some degree, that's kind of part this on a much lighter scale. But my interest in making sure that I do hike every possible trail that I can is something, because I know that I would regret that, but not nearly as much as not picking up the phone to call someone important. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, and you are never going to regret spending time with your children. Like you aren't. So I mean, you might look back on your life and regret how much time you spent away from them, but you're never going to regret how much time you spend with them. It's like, I think about this when I get angry if I'm riding my bike and and somebody comes too close to me in a car or whatever. You will never regret being kind. But you will regret being unkind.
Absolutely. And that's one. Okay, you know what? I hadn't really thought about that till you mentioned it. But last year, that was the only real one I made. Because like I said, I don't really do this. But last year, I decided I was going to stop being mad in the car. And you can. It's crazy. You can just decide not to. Maybe that's unusual. I don't know. But I was able to do it. Where I just, I think I mentioned this to you once before, but I decided to channel Rob Machado, the very famously laid-back pro surfer from the 90s. I don't know why he popped into my head, but for some reason, I guess I've always wanted to live like Rob or something. I don't know what it is. But I just imagine Rob Machado driving a Vanagon. I don't even know if he has a Vanagon. I bet he has at one point had a Vanagon and just driving around and someone cuts him off, and where I might have gotten enraged and gotten on the horn and flipped a bird, I always think, I bet Rob Machado just goes, "Whoa, dude," just to himself, and then just goes on. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to do that always from now on. And it makes such a huge difference. It really does. And I don't, like the other day we were driving and I got to something super dangerous, and like I started to get kind of like, because I had the whole family in the car. But even then, it was able to just like he passed and that was fine, and I didn't really think about it again. So yeah, you can.
Have you ever seen Atlanta?
What, the movie?
No,
Is that a
the
movie?
show, the Donald Glover
No,
show.
nope.
Oh, I often think, what would Darius do? So
Yeah.
add another thing to your list.
It's weird. It's
kids
weird
are
how
grown.
some character. Well, Robin Child's not a character. I guess his professional surfing life, maybe he's sort of a character. But it's weird for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why that's the person I decided to model my road rage after. But anyway, so that was one I actually did.
Okay.
I did.
Well, let's take a break. We will be right back. You love adventure, we love adventure, and that is why we created Adventure Journal in print. It is the gift that we've made for ourselves and for our friends, and hopefully for you, that is analog, that gets away from screens, that gives you some of the most interesting, deepest, and thoughtful stories from some of the best writers and photographers working in the outdoor space. We do 4 a year. You get free shipping and a deep discount. It's $60 to have this absolutely beautiful, no batteries necessary celebration of adventure in your mailbox. Get it at adventure-journal.com. I am drinking, it's gotten cold now because we're halfway through the show. I am drinking Long Weekend Coffee. We launched Long Weekend Coffee earlier this year to bring you and us blends that are not fussy, that will take any kind of brew method that we like, whether it's at home, in a cabin, on the tailgate of a truck, doesn't matter. We have 4 blends. We have dark, medium, espresso roast, and a decaf. I think they're pretty amazing. I guarantee you will like them. Check us out at longweekend.coffee. Welcome back. We are talking about resolutions, New Year's and otherwise. I've been talking a bit about how I don't particularly believe in them, even though I love them, just because I don't want to set myself up for failure by doing grand goals that I can't achieve. One of the things that I like to think about is letters to my younger self, like what I would tell my younger self, and also gifts to my future self. Do you ever think about it that way, Justin?
No, but it makes sense to me. Gifts to your future self is interesting. I mean, I who doesn't judge themselves, look back and wish they'd done things like differently. But my entire mantra about that is just be way easier on yourself. Stop being so hard on myself for all the things I've not done or done wrong or whatever. But gifts to your future self is pretty cool. I mean, that would make sense with your longevity sort of, not obsession, but research and the way that you're eating and kind of moving and stuff like that. I mean, that's a gift to your future self. I never think about that. I honestly don't think I'm very day to day. Like as far as I'm concerned, today's what we have. If tomorrow comes, that's great. But we'll see. We'll see about it when it gets here.
You sound like you should write a book on mindfulness, living in the moment.
I kind of
that's where you are.
That's like my whole thing right now. I mean, I've spent so much of my life worrying about the future. I mean, that's probably 90% of my life up until until I had kids, honestly, which I would have thought would have ramped up, but it's gone the opposite. Where now I'm just trying to get through the day. But God, I'm so tired of worrying about the future. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about myself in like 20 years.
Yeah, well, that's one reason maybe you should have more children. So you just stay in that.
Good God. Yeah, just just kick that can down the road. Yeah,
that gray-haired, grizzled old man is going to be you in a couple of years.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the thing about resolutions for me or goals of any kind is thinking about ways that you can achieve them. Mm-hmm. Because the thing that we're fighting is routine and inertia of the way that we've always done things, right? I think about the year that I was like, I'm going to ride 500,000 vertical feet. Well, I mean, that took like serious commitment that I was going to do that. And in the end, I was a little fitter, but I don't know that it changed me in any kind of meaningful way. And I think that I'm more interested in change that will be meaningful to me, that will maybe be something that makes my relationships better or that, ripples outward in some way. My issue with a lot of my past adventure goals is that they're just so damn selfish.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, that's interesting, but I guess, like that's kind of the reasons I don't really want to be held accountable for my goals, like, and I don't mean that in a slacker way. Like I'm probably going to fail, but I don't want to introduce like any kind of negativity into it. I'm pretty happy. Like that's a hard thing to make a New Year's resolution. I mean, I'm pretty stoked. I mean, kind of life has worked out pretty well. So I'm not really in a place where I feel like I need to make dramatic changes to be the person I want to be. Like I've already gone through that in a lot of ways to get to this point. And a lot of therapy, a lot of help from family and friends and things like that. So like it's kind of just tweaking what's already kind of worked in a lot of ways. So like I don't know, like I guess I'm wrestling with the idea of whether these are like selfish. It's more just, like I just would like to. There's a couple things I haven't done that I'd like to have done, and I don't know if that's selfish or not. I mean, it's interesting. They don't really affect anybody else though, so I guess that is sort of being selfish. But I feel like I'd be happier for it, I guess, to a certain degree. So my family would be happier too. I don't know. I don't want to leave stuff on the table.
Yeah, I guess it's just identifying what that stuff is, right, and what's most important. We had a big get together with friends a couple days before Christmas, and one of my friends asked what was on everybody's bucket list. And I think she meant primarily travel,
Yeah.
and I've always despised the term bucket list. It just feels cheesy to me, but that's not criticism of her. It's just part of the vernacular now, right? That's just what we use. And I guess one of the benefits of being the age that I am now and also the career that I've had is, man, so many of the things that were on my younger list, I've been able to do.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't have things, but I don't really think about it as a list so much. I don't know. It's been interesting. I mean, now that I don't want to say this, but now that I'm over 60, God, that sounds so old. Well, one of my resolutions is to not talk about age.
One is to not be 60.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't go backward, and I don't want to go forward any faster. No, like everybody, like, all right, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of age and talking about all that stuff. At some point in 2023, I shared with you an essay that I read about kind of the curse, the diabolical curse of optimization culture.
Yeah,
right.
I remember that.
And this idea that we can always be more optimized, that we can find some better productivity system. We move from Asana to Good Task to Apple Reminders. We move from Evernote to Bear to Obsidian. I'm speaking personally here.
Right.
With this idea that we're chasing some way that we're going to ultimately be better, that we're going to be more optimized. And the reality is that we will never be quote unquote fully optimized, right? And so what I've been trying to do in this minimalism thing is at the heart of it is kind of optimizing my, I don't know, like my base state, I guess, with like broader ways of thinking about the world. And so like this longevity thing, like I'm trying to do stuff that is science-based. And so let me share a few of the books that I've read that have actually made a difference for me, that have actually turned these ideas of resolutions like losing weight and being healthier into actual fundamental day-to-day challenges or changes. The first one was by James Nestor. It was Breath. Yeah. And I sent copies to practically everybody I knew because I had no understanding of how much we take for granted our breathing.
Yeah.
And the effect that has on our health on a daily basis. I am a mouth breather when I sleep. And I started taping my mouth closed when I read the book. And man, it's been transformative. Like I don't get up as much. I'm not as dehydrated. I have more REM sleep. I sleep longer. I feel better rested. So there are all these things that I have been doing that came out of breath and changing how I breathe that actually had, like, I saw fundamental differences in my life just based on a few simple things with my breathing. And actually, I went to a screening of the surfer Jerry Lopez biopic that came out last year. And Jerry was there, and there was a Q&A, and somebody asked him, like, and the movie was about kind of how yoga, so Jerry's known as this super stylish, very chill, calm surfer, and he discovered yoga early on. And he just basically said, I was just trying to bring yoga into my surfing. Yeah. And somebody asked him in the Q&A afterward, like, okay, like, what can I do to, like, what's the secret of life, basically? And he goes, I don't know, breathe through your nose.
That's amazing. That sounds like Jerry.
Which was amazing. That totally, like, so much Jerry. Comes through that. So I would recommend that people who haven't read Breath, and you will find things in there that will resonate with you. And then also Peter Attia had a book that was on the bestseller list called Outlive, which is the science of longevity. And then Unprocessed People. And I put both of these in the aging newsletter that we sent this week. And there's so many I realized, and I know it sounds like I'm kind of going far afield from resolutions, but this is all come back to, I think life changes really is what we're talking about, and being healthier is that we have this miraculous thing that is our bodies. And we are taught so little about how it really works. And there are fundamental revolutions in understanding of things now. And like, let's just take weight loss. Like, I want to lose weight. I'm at least 20 pounds heavier than I want to be, or probably should be, for my health. Well, there's been really interesting research going on about connecting obesity and how much fatter we all are to processed foods, and to all the things that are in processed foods, the chemicals and other things that we don't understand. And we don't understand what they do, but we do know that, transnational food corporations, food product corporations, are building things in there to make us not be able to stop eating these things. Right? So I think that the path that I've been on for the last couple of years has been one of like personal empowerment with knowledge and science-based knowledge. This stuff isn't woo, like there are like omega-3s, which we don't have anywhere near enough of. Like over and over again, you will see that the more that people eat omega-3s, the longer they live and the healthier they are. Like a lot of these things are really simple in concept. So my resolutions have been ongoing. I want to be healthier, and I want to understand how my body works, and I want to understand the relationship between what goes in and what comes out, and where I go from that. And so I think like the future self kind of thing, like a gift to a future self. I think like, okay, like, yeah, I can eat this, but like, how am I going to feel tomorrow? Or how am I going to feel, a week from now? And it's not about the number on the scale. It's more like, how am I going to feel physically and emotionally about myself?
I don't know how it's possible that this has never occurred to me before, but it seems kind of wild now to go, okay, my goal for this year is to really know all the trail systems of Marin and these sort of veins that snake through the trees and where they all go. And never once have I made a priority to really understand how my body functions. Like that's never something I've thought about. I've never spent the time to think. I want to know. Like I don't know anything about the human body. I don't know where my gallbladder is. I don't know what it does. I don't know why you need two kidneys. I don't know. I'm not really 100% sure how the liver works. I mean, these are things I've never really given a whole lot of thought to. I'm more interested for some reason in what the trees are around here than I am. I mean, did we talk about the interstitium when we were at Joshua Tree? I mean, that like scientists just figured out this like organ kind of that they had no idea existed. Well, at least Western doctors didn't. I mean, how astonishing is that? But like, I mean, for all that, there could be all kinds of stuff like that in the human body that I don't know about. Probably are, but man,
there's so much. I mean, it's really shocking. So, I pay attention a lot to Peter Attia. I listen to a lot of Rhonda Patrick's podcast. She's a biochemist.
Yep.
She focuses a lot on longevity. She has a gene that predisposes her to Alzheimer's. So she spends a lot of time looking at brain health and blood-brain barrier. And she's just amazing and fascinating to listen to. And I feel so much more. I mean, I feel like I struggle to retain this stuff on an ongoing basis. It kind of comes back to, move,
Yeah.
eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes back to really simple things, but for like where this has had even an impact in my adventure stuff, like, one of Peter's things, and he's not the only one, but sort of one of his things has been zone 2 training. And also the like the new alpinism, which Keelan Jornet has been involved in, and looking at like trying to be more efficient in your training because we all have limited time. One of the things that was really cool for me was understanding like what's happening in my body when I am training at say 70 to 80% of my max heart rate versus 90 to 95%, and how I've always been curious about like, what is blood sugar again?
Yeah.
And how is, what is my body drawing on when is glucose and sugar versus fats, and what difference does that make?
Yeah.
And I was just listening to, there's a great new episode it's Rhonda's podcast. It's on YouTube. I forget what she calls it. And then she's interviewing Peter, and it's like 3.5 hours long. And it's just chock full of so much stuff. And they were talking about like metabolic flexibility. And I'm like, okay, what is that again? And it's your body's ability to draw, whether it needs to, on glucose, on stored sugars or stored fats.
Right.
And why that matters. And so like that actually informs, what I've been doing over the last year in how I run. And I think I might have shared this at some point, but like staying in zone 2 can be kind of boring, but man, like I'm not crushed when I come home. I mean, I do have rides where I'm crushed, but sometimes I come home and I feel great. And it like the whole rest of my day isn't spent on the couch.
That's such a, like that, the idea of really diving into like what you're eating. And I don't mean necessarily on a broad scale, but like chemically, like what these things do and why they're important, is something that I think, at least I like a lot of sort of casual people that like try to eat well, but that's kind of the limit, of our thinking about it. That would be like transformative, especially in your like outdoor sort of adventure endeavors. I mean, like when I'm putting together food for a, for like a day hike or something like that. Like I'm like, I know nuts are good and like dried fruit's good. And like, that's kind of, it's like, I don't really think too heavily about it. I'm not thinking about the mix of sugars to fats. I'm not thinking of, is there enough carbohydrates in this so that I can finish this last 2 miles without wanting to die? Or whatever. I don't ever think about any of that, which I should. I mean, I think I probably put more thought into what I'm putting in my truck in terms of getting it to the mountains and is it going to work right than I am my own body. It's like, well, once I get there, I'll just eat whatever I want and I'll get up that hill. Well, yeah, but I probably should think a lot more about it. That's a great. I'm blown away at how little I think about my body, other than I'd like to be stronger and like fitter. That's it. That's about it.
I would say that everybody, no matter your age, should empower themselves with this knowledge. So, again, I would read Breath, I would read Outlive just as a start. I would read Breath, Outlive, and ultra processed people, because it is shocking the shit that is in food that we don't know about. I've gone through like many phases where I do calorie counting using the MyFitness app. One thing that has really changed for me just in the last couple months, not even the last couple of months, maybe like in the last 3 or 4 weeks, is that I'm not paying attention to calories so much as I'm paying attention to nutrients. And so I really, through all this research, I did a deep dive into how much vitamin D should I have? I'm vegan. How much B12? What is the appropriate, not just the recommended, but like what is the appropriate level of protein? And then I just heard this like yesterday on one of Patrick's episodes. Like she thinks less about what she shouldn't eat and more what she should. And when you think about what you should for nutrients, then sort of everything else falls into place. So, coming back to this idea of resolutions, for me, I think it's like trying to find ways to empower myself with knowledge that will almost make me intuitively make better decisions, better, healthier decisions. I will say the one resolution that I made that had the most probably impact for me, and I think that I'm still living the benefits of that, is 1 year I said that I was going to do 30 new things. Yeah. And I wasn't going to do, I thought about 52. I thought about doing one a week, and I thought, well, let's make this attainable, because I think we need to talk a little bit about accountability here and how you make these things attainable. But I was like, okay, I can do 30. And so I took almost every week, I took Friday off. I often left on Thursday night and I camped somewhere. And it was a whole slew of things, from exploring Santa Ana, which I'd never explored, to peak bagging, to, making a list of coffee shops that I wanted to go check out, like new restaurants. Like it was all these kinds of new things. And that, talk about like getting you out of your sleepwalking.
Yep.
It was amazing. And I actually pulled it off. I mean, I did 30 new things. And, at one point I was like, okay, I'm eating mushrooms, which I don't like. That's a new thing. That counts. But, I got out in the world and I saw, and I went to new places. And I think that sense of novelty, and this is one of my issues with, like, I'm going to ride 5,000. I'm going to ride 5,000 vertical feet this year. I'm going to ride 500,000 vertical feet. Like, kind of the redundancy of those things. And if that's your goal, more power to you. But like, the year that I was chasing vertical, I would go back to the same hills over and over again. And I'm way more interested in novelty.
There's real quick. There's not to push anybody to a different podcast, but especially one that's not as good as ours, called Radio Lab, which some of you have probably heard of. But they did one a few months back where they actually explored whether or not trying new things can sort of like kind of like stretch your conception of time. They don't really come to a conclusion, by the way, but it's a good episode. It's worth listening to. But one of the producer or the reporter for that episode spent like 2 weeks, or what, maybe it was longer, trying something new every day, more complicated than like a mushroom. I'm going to eat mushrooms now, like learning how to surf. I don't know how to swim, but I'm going to try it, that kind of thing, to see if it either shrunk or expanded their conception of time. And it kind of depended on what they were doing, but it was really fascinating. And that's reason enough to try new things.
I think new things are really important. And I mean, this is true in training with your body. You shouldn't do the same routine all the time. It's true in food. You should mix up, not eat the same thing every day, although pizza does, have a good case for itself.
Yeah. My children would disagree with that statement about trying new things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gets you out of your comfort zone, right? And I think that's just part of the fun is trying new.
So what's your trick for accountability then? So how do you, if you're making, because it sounds like you obviously aren't really making resolutions, but in the past, well, you've done both. You've had very specific ones, but then now you're on kind of a more broader sort of all the time sort of like self-empowerment sort of thing, self-improvement sort of thing. How does accountability work?
It has to be personal accountability. I've made bets with friends and that I would do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And,
that never works with me.
Yeah. And I don't, I'm more lone wolf like you. I ride by myself. I run by myself. I don't, run with a pack where I've, got the same buddies that I ride with all the time and, who could help me keep me balanced. So, I'm focused more on these kind of big goal guidelines. So I'm using Chronometer as my app for tracking my nutrients. I am using Strava and Apple Health and Work Outdoors. And I just downloaded, let me look what this is, this app that I'm using, Welltory, which tracks heart rate variability and a bunch of other stuff. I'm using Health Fit. My daughter gifted us a family subscription to Headspace.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I've been trying to say, yeah, I always liked it, but like the free stuff is just so repetitive.
Yeah, it's worth paying for. Yeah.
So I've been trying to do more meditation. So for me, it's tracking, and I mean, believe me, I really want to lose weight and I want to feel better, in my body, and I want to feel like I look better in my clothes, but I'm less motivated by that than I'm trying to like shift into like, these are the things that I want to do. And it's the same thing like with my, like, I still have like peak bagging lists, I'm still working on the Sierra Club, 100. the 100 Peaks Challenge, which is like 270 or 280. I mean, there's still a very specific adventure things that I'm doing. I have a pile of peaks in Joshua Tree that I want to do. Those lists have not gone away from my head, but I feel like I'm being more fundamental in that I want more motion in my day. I want less time sitting in my day. And so I'm using these apps to track me getting out and off my butt and doing things. So off camera, before we were started, we were talking with Jackson and Bridget about this acronym SMART around goals. And I think this is an interesting one. I don't know if I'll use it, but I'm sure it could be powerful and it may help some people. So it's SMART, and what it stands for is that your resolutions need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Mm-hmm. So
there's a kind of an important thing lacking there, though, which is like why, or like some sort of, I mean, to me, I would add, like, is there, I mean, like, there's no, I guess the why is you obviously you want to make a change, but like a lot of this can be kind of arbitrary, So yeah, maybe I achieved my goal of hiking every single trail in Marin County. It fits all those criteria, but then like, why am I doing it? I mean, you asked me that from the beginning, and like that's pretty crucial. Otherwise, you're still you're still sort of sleepwalking. You're just kind of checking off boxes as you do it. Which again is part of the reason that I don't, like I said earlier, I don't really feel like accountability is big for these sorts of things for me, because I like when I think like I said, I don't really do resolutions, but this year I am, and it's more just taking stock of where I am. It's a good excuse to just kind of step back and okay, what does my normal day look like? What does my normal year look like? Am I doing the things I want to be doing? Pretty much, yeah. So I'm just going to kind of like polish up the rough edges, kind of that, and that's the way I'm doing it. And if I don't achieve it, that's fine. Like it's just being more mindful about it. I mean, honestly, my resolution should probably just be enter some sort of Buddhist practice like every year, because clearly that's kind of what I'm circling around, which is just being kind of more aware of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you figured out, and I think that's really a great approach. One of the differences between us is our age, and being 62, I'm at a spot where I've had a whole lifetime of mega adventures, and I know that all our days are limited. All of us, our days are limited, but I'm closer to theoretically. And so I know that, I don't know whether I have 10 or 20 or 30 years, but I know that I'm more cognizant of my time being finite. So I want to think about how I want to spend it. I also have elders around me with health issues, and I've had, injuries and things like that. And so, I'm kind of, I'm trying to set myself up. I was talking about sort of plateaus or foundations. I'm trying to set myself up for the next, 35 years of my life. And that means changing some things fundamentally, especially physically and nutritionally and all that other sort of stuff. And, two other things I think that are important for me. One is that in the end, nobody really cares that I had a year where in December I rode 105,000 vertical feet.
Cares. Yep.
Nobody cares. That's not going to be on my tombstone.
Yep.
And one of the shifts for me, and maybe this is fairly typical that comes with age, is that I don't have anything to prove.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to prove to myself. I'm more hands off about a lot of things. And I chased a lot of things, distance, mileage, body fat, all of those things when I was younger. And it just doesn't, those things just don't matter compared to the kind of connection you have with other people. And so, I think about my purpose a lot, and, my primary vehicle, I think, for change in the world is Adventure Journal. I want Adventure Journal through sharing the stories of adventure, because I really believe that living with adventure in our life and exploration and discovery, I think it makes us more resilient. I think it makes us stronger. It makes us better people. It makes us more empathetic. So I think AJ is the platform that we have for that. And so that's my purpose. That's one of my big purposes. The longer that I can live and the healthier that I am, the more I will be able to do that. And so I do think the why is like really important. And I would encourage anybody who's still listening to us at this point, who is thinking about their resolutions, to think about the why of them, because that ultimately is what makes you accountable. It makes you
Right.
accountable to yourself, right? Like if you know that you want to live a long time and you're not in the best place, then you will naturally start eating more kale or omega-3s or whatever that may be.
Yep. 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 I mean, there's no really no reason to make a change otherwise if you don't know
No.
why you're doing it. Yeah.
So I think, I did want to share. Yeah, I think you had one last that you were going to share, and I want to share one thing. So I was telling you that say yes, and no regrets. So the one thing that I have been thinking a lot about, and I read this recently, I can't remember, it was in relation to food. And I don't remember where I read it, but I've been thinking about this with everything I do, which is to make it an act of love. Like to the things that I put in my body, to make that an act of love. And that's already enabled me to make better decisions about what I'm eating. It's also, even in terms of how I've been interacting with other people, thinking about, I've been to a bunch of parties lately and out with friends, and, just thinking about how I talk, like thinking about like how I'm living as an act of love. And you can interpret that however you want, but like the kindness thing, like all of those things are connected with this idea. And so, going forward, I'm trying to think about things, how much can I make this an act of love as opposed to selfishness?
Yeah. That's great. And which is awesome because the only thing,
So what's yours?
Well, I was going to say the last one that I hadn't talked about yet. I mean, it's like the most selfish possible thing in the world. I mean, I've devoted my entire life to surfing. I mean, it's funny. I don't know. A lot of my friends who are in our 40s are like finally reconciling like what that's meant for us, and it sounds so lame to complain about. I mean, we've all gotten the chance to see really beautiful places, and like I wouldn't trade most of my 20s for anything, which were devoted almost entirely to surfing. But there's nothing more selfish in the world than being a surfer. There really isn't. And like my wife could bore everybody here for hours about how many times I've begged us to move from one place to the other for surf reasons, or for maybe a surf job in the industry, but usually because I just want to surf somewhere that's warmer, or whatever. Just like, my God, or the time wasted just driving around looking for waves. But so anyway, my fifth, and I think it's fifth or whatever, my final resolution is to just surf 5 new waves to me this year. That's it. Like as part of my way to kind of break out of my routine. I don't live in a place where I can like walk down the street and surf. I got to drive like 40 minutes, which is a big impediment, as you can imagine, to getting in the water as much as I'd like to. So, but I wrote an article for AJ a couple years back about like the soft top revolution in surfing and how that's completely changed my approach and how much more fun I'm having in the water now, because I just don't care anymore about performance. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just having a blast every time I surf, because I usually ride boards that are kind of hard to perform on anyway now. And so now I'm a little bit more willing to go surf waves that I wouldn't have surfed otherwise. And like there's this whole unexplored coastline out here, and it's so easy to just go surf the same waves all the time. So my goal is to, between now and 2025, to surf 5 places I haven't surfed yet. Hopefully ones that like no one else is really surfing either. But again, unbelievably selfish. I mean, it's like I got to put all my work away to do it. Probably have my wife pick up the girls that day to do it. Tempting massive fate with I live in a very sharky area, and if there's no one surfing there, there's usually a reason for it. So you couldn't be more selfish. But you know what? It's my little present to myself.
Steve Hawk has an interview in the latest issue of Surfer's Journal. Has at least one friend, if not a couple of friends, I believe, that are shark experts, and he interviewed them, and your odds are probably pretty good. Yeah, it's selfish, but I mean, like, if you were going to say you were going to surf every week, that's probably not attainable.
Right.
But like 5 new waves, that sounds great. Have you ever surfed Doheny or?
No, I mean down there. No, I'm talking entirely like up here. But
see, you like, snob, come down here.
Well, Doheny was a great example. Like that's a wave that I would have like not normally really even looked at in the years past, because I've never really been a longboarder. Like I've liked different kinds of waves, but that wave looks so fun. You're like what a blast! That sounds fantastic to me. Just a nice, beautiful spot, being able to ride a soft top or longboard, whatever, just have some fun. It sounds great. I mean, I have to say
that one of my favorite surfing experiences ever. So I can be in the water at Doheny in 11 minutes from my house. It is tiny little wave. It is always crowded. Is not what you ever call a premium wave, not even close to it. But is in the summertime when all the kids are out,
Yeah.
and there's like literally 30 people on a wave. Like
Yeah.
to me, like that is the joy of that is, not that I wouldn't mind a nice smooth, offshore day at Dressel's, but I mean, God, it's just, it's so much fun. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, I guess we've talked about resolutions, up, down, and sideways, and it's time for us to peace out. As I mentioned earlier, we want to know what your resolutions are. We would love to hear your feedback. Mail at adventure-journal.com, DM us on Instagram, leave a comment on YouTube. We would love it and appreciate it, and practically beg you to subscribe, to follow, to leave us a thumbs up. And if you want to know more about AJ, especially our gorgeous printed quarterly, the winter issue is out now with what may be my favorite cover photo of all time. You can do that at adventure-journal.com. We're on all the socials. We appreciate you listening. Take care.